Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon Pickups.
What?
Pickups.
Hey, it's me, Todd Novak. Glad you are with us. We are so excited for another Guitar Knobs podcast, my favorite thing of the week. We've got a super duper special guest with us in studio.
He's right there.
It's not that
He's
special.
right here.
What's up?
You're
Rob
so
Chafe,
special.
Mad Cow Amplification.
Mad Cow Amplification. What does that mean? It means that he repairs amps and stuff. And what does that mean? That means this is the So You're Gonna Buy a Used Amp 101.
Yes.
Woo! We love the 101s over here on the Guitar Knobs. And if you are joining us for the very first time, I would like to maybe call out exactly what we do here really quick. Jared.
Well,
All right. Tony.
what the hell are you talking about?
First, you get the thing, and then you put your name in the thing.
Right.
And then you get your name.
So what we do is we focus on smaller builders, boutiques,
if you will.
builders of pedals, of amps, of guitars, people that fly a little bit lower under the radar that are doing really awesome things.
Yep.
And that's what we do here at the Guitar Knobs. Rob is flying somewhat under the radar, working hard on the bench that he occupies. He's got a great Instagram channel that if you look at it at the whole, it just sort of looks like a bunch of electronic stuff, and you're like, what? But if you read on further into his post, you're like, oh, that's awesome. One of the issues that I find personally when I go to the guitar shows or am looking on Craigslist or Reverb is I see awesome looking amps or storied amps that old silver hairs tell fables of. And, there's just a handful of brands and amps that people are like, man, if you're going to rock, you got to need this. And then you get into investigating that and you can fall into a rabbit hole of crazy pantsness. So we are going to dispel some of the myths, some of the challenges, some of the watch-outs, and help the rest of us who aren't amp experts do a better job of buying a used amp if that's what we need to do.
Oh, yeah.
All right, super duper. Hey, we want to do a ginormous thank you to Rode Microphones for sponsoring our show and providing us with awesome microphones, the Rode Procaster microphones, allowing us to record our thoughts, opinions, and nonsense every single week. Thank you so much for the gear that you guys provided us. That's Rode Microphones, built entirely out of Sydney, Australia. Cool stuff.
Thanks, Rode.
You bet. On reverb.com, I would like to direct your attention to a series, a segment, an area on the website that I think is little known, but actually is really cool. It's called the Learn to Play series. As I'm looking at it right now, there are 562 results for Learn to Play. So you're going to get guitar, it's drums, it's bass, it's all kinds of stuff. But the cool thing is that you get stuff like riffs in the key of Jeff Beck, or
Good luck with that. Which key exactly would that be?
Learn to play Albert King riffs, Lightning Hopkins. Like it's not all bluesy stuff. Learn to play. Let's see, what's another one? Hey, here's one. Learn riffs in the key of Jaco Pastorius. Right, Dweezil Zappa using picking patterns and writing melodies. So what this is, riffs in the key of Jerry Garcia.
Is Smells Like Teen Spirit in there?
I don't know. Probably play riffs in the key of Dick Dale. Anyways, so
He is the king of surf guitar.
He is the king of surf guitar.
Yes.
My point is there are a ton of easy entry ways to pick up that certain something that these artists possess. This is what this does well. Just sort of give you a hey, you know that thing that you kind of like? This is how that's done. So
Let me tell you a story.
Sir.
Because I'm an old guy.
Yep.
And way back when in the 1980s when I was playing, if we wanted to learn a song, we either had to put it on a cassette tape and keep hitting rewind.
That's how I learned how to play guitar.
And so it is so much easier. I find myself, if someone says, hey, let's learn to play this song.
I fast forwarded to CDs. But
yeah, well, if you don't have any money. I had to wait for the song to come on the radio and record it.
Whoa, yeah, there you go. Yeah. But no, it is, and I mean, you have to take a lot of the information that's on the internet with a grain of salt.
Sure.
And I think the stuff on Reverb has probably been vetted a little bit more.
The difference is this is coming from the understanding of not only who uses Reverb, which is people like us and people like you listening, and it's also been sort of compacted and digested. It's not by just a random person. Like there's a themed way of creating content that they have excelled in. So you're going to get that flavor of thing through this. So anyways, check out reverb.com and look for the Learn to Play series. Mighty cool. All right, let's get on with this, shall we, gentlemen? Yes. Tony, what's going on in your music work? Tony, tell us what's going on. What are you up to?
Well, this week, actually, I brought them in for Jared today. I'm working on a couple of different projects, and I scored an original 1963 Guild pickup, that single coil pickup that was made by Hagstrom for Guild, and I'm trying to replicate something similar to that. So Jared is going to take that and hopefully not destroy it too terribly.
No, of course not.
But no, he'll do a good job. Yeah. And I also picked up a couple of other DeArmond style pickups that we're just playing around to see what's going to work. We might actually take those casings and put these single coil type things in.
Sure.
But they're really cool. And that was that was the highlight of my week, I guess. In addition to chopping up plastics, taking big sheets of plastic and putting them into small little.
It's always a cool thing when you get a few things, a few, parts and whatnot, and you want to make your own thing out of it.
Yeah.
You know what
Wow.
I'm saying?
I totally know what you're saying.
So we got the pickup parts, right?
Yep.
And we may be just building our own thing out of that.
We might be doing our own thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Sorry, I can't be more specific.
Yes.
No, that's all right.
Top secret stuff.
Yeah.
Shh.
Okay, Jared, what's going on in your world this week?
So
Tony gives me these parts.
Right. No, this is actually pickup related this time. So I had a customer.
What do you mean actually pickup related? It's usually pickup related.
Oh, come on.
Or lays related.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, go
Not
ahead.
the potato chips.
That's true.
Well, sometimes
So-
the potato chips.
Yeah, you're making me hungry.
Jared's 3 beers in, by the way. Go ahead, Jared.
Yeah. So anyhow, I sold a set of pickups online. A few days later, the customer emails me back and says, "Hey, I am not satisfied with these pickups." And I'm like, I don't understand why. He said, "Well, you don't have the branding on the bottom of the bobbin." And I said, I'm very sorry about that. My laser is down. I couldn't etch in that information. And he wrote me back and said, "Well, I don't know if you sent me the product that I ordered because it doesn't say it on the bottom of the bobbin."
Now, Todd, you might have a thing or two to say about branding, wouldn't you?
I would,
Everybody has their
to
opinion,
those who want to listen.
right? So anyway,
To the enlightened ones.
I remember even emailing the buyer before I sent the product out, and he didn't seem to mind. So anyway, he said, "Listen, I don't know what you sent me because the branding isn't on the bottom. I'm going to send you these back. I want a refund." I said, "That's perfectly fine with me. Obviously you hear with your eyes and whatever. Some people do that." So he sends me back the pickups. We start the return and he sends me back the pickups. I open the box. It's not my box and it's not even my pickups. They're not even mine.
Yep.
They're like this crappy Chinese. I'm surprised he even sent a set of pickups. If you're not going to send the pickups you bought for me back, why even send anything?
That's awesome.
So I get upset and I call the organization
Resolution.
that sells, and they said, "Well, we're not going to hold you to refunding the buyer. Obviously, you can keep the money from the sale, but we are going to refund the buyer." However, I was kind of upset that the guy's going to get away with it.
Yep.
And then on the other hand, I was actually quite happy that he wanted to keep my pickups. So
No, he's going to return him to someone else.
no, man. I mean, maybe he's keeping them and putting them in his guitar. That would actually make me happy if I knew that's what he was going to do.
Yeah, but that's not really the moral of the story.
Yeah. Well, ethically, it's wrong, right? Because he got free pickups.
It's bad karma.
It's bad karma.
It
Do
is.
not do that, listeners.
Yeah,
Don't be a bad
It's a
listener.
scam, and he's going to get caught.
Yeah.
I did report him,
Yeah.
by the way.
Rightly so. Rightly so. We should support each other rightfully in the guitar community.
That's correct. And
I think most people do.
I want to see
think
justice.
most part, yeah.
And someday justice will be served to this fella, just not me.
Justice.
That's right.
Justice. Don't need a law and
section
order.
for you there.
Justice.
I've never heard that before.
That's actually a great story, and I'm totally over
That's
it.
the Runaways.
It's actually a great story he tells himself.
The story you just told us.
Yes.
Remember when
Little
I
pat
was
on the
in the
back.
Runaways?
That's actually a great story that I just told.
I'm glad
But
I told
it's
that.
true.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
I got my money back. I'm good.
Yeah, but it still stinks that somebody
It is,
would
man.
pull
Ethically,
goofy stuff.
you know-
so if you're out there listening,
I'm right here. You don't have to yell at me.
I'm telling you,
I mean, if
you're out there and you sent bogus pickups back to Jared, you should be ashamed of yourself.
that's
Yeah,
right.
for shame.
For shame.
All right. Speaking of shame, hey Rob,
What's up, Todd?
what's going on in your guitar world this week?
Nothing exciting, really. Nothing personal.
You know how many times people start off with that,
And then it's something really exciting. Yeah.
or that I have to edit and say, "Wait a minute, help me out here."
I don't have any great stories where I've got stuff returned. No angry customers this week. Those are the best stories when I have an angry,
That's a good week.
Yeah.
disgruntled customer, because that always ends well. But
What about guitar stuff that you're playing? Because you're a musician, man.
yeah, and well, here's the thing though.
Yes.
When you're a full-time musician and you repair stuff and work on people's gear, you never work or play on your own gear.
You
never do.
understand that.
You know, it has to be falling apart for me to replace
Cobbler's
something.
children have no shoes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't, not this week, but recently I bought a reverb pedal, and that was a very deep rabbit hole I went down.
Oh yeah.
I had,
What'd you get?
What'd you get?
well, I
What'd you
landed, well, I got all of them. It's
You got
literally,
all of 'em.
I had at some point, like,
Every reverb pedal out there I own now.
dude, no, if it was
right.
made in the US and like higher quality, yes, I seriously had it. At one point, I had like 20 reverb pedals at one point.
Wow.
This is what I do when I get crazy about something.
I hear
I go
you.
all the way down.
You're
So
in
Playing
good
like
company.
Todd.
it's great. I must have had, seriously, I had something like $4 or $5 grand worth of reverb pedals sitting in my basement. But anyways, so I landed on Solid Gold FX. Are you guys hip to
Oh
them?
yeah.
Dude, their Surf Rider reverb, that is definitely the closest to a spring reverb I've ever heard in a pedal.
Really?
Period. It is astounding. And all the controls work just like they should. Nice wide sweeps. You can use it all. Has a boost function, which is like adds the depth of the reverb to like double. Perfect. Everything about it is perfect. And it's built like a tank.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
That's cool.
Surf Rider, Solid Gold. Awesome stuff.
All right. I hope is that. We'll see if that makes. Is that on your 4 on the floor? We'll see. I don't know.
Oh.
Surf rider.
Anyways,
What about
Todd,
you,
what-
man?
what you been-
What
Todd,
you?
what is going on?
Todd,
Hey, Todd.
Yes.
Hey.
So I had a weird thing where I'm a huge fan of strap locks. I put strap locks the minute a guitar gets in my house. I put strap locks on. Right.
Required.
There was a guitar from somebody that's going to be a guest that I'm very excited about. I mean, I can just go ahead and say Echo Park Guitars. Echo Park Guitars is going to be on. Sent a guitar over, and I put it on, and it almost fell out of the actual strap, which I was terrified about. And I realized, I was like, oh man, I don't have anything to. And so I tried another strap, and the same thing was happening. And then I realized I'm going to have to get some of those like sort of Grolsch washer.
That's all you need.
I know. But I don't have any of them.
Better safe than sorry.
So I had
get a
to sit.
six-pack
I had to sit and play it, and I don't like doing that. I
Wow.
stand and play. I'm a stand player.
That is a serious first world problem right there.
Right?
Hate when you have to.
He had to sit.
I know.
and
Well,
play.
you know, I couldn't get into the, because I like to when I'm playing my guitar. So
Go to the bathroom? Is that what you're doing?
It probably looks like that to some, I'm sure.
It did, actually.
Yeah.
Hey, to
Anyways.
each their own.
Yeah.
In which case you should be sitting anyhow.
Yes.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
4 on the floor.
Okay, Rob, hit us 4 on the floor. Give it to us.
4 on the floor. Okay. Actually, I had to write this one down because I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this. First one, Demeter Compulator.
Oh, wow.
What?
I'm not
Ever
familiar
heard
with
of
that.
this one? Okay.
Demeter?
Demeter? They make
Demeter.
amps and a couple, 3 pedals
Is
maybe.
it, how do you spell it? Demeter? Demeter?
I pronounced it Demeter, but
Demeter?
I don't know because here's the thing. I've never
Well, we've plugged
been
it like
into
6
it.
times now.
Yeah,
so-
I think it's Demeter.
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 I've never been to a dealer.
like
I've never
the
met anybody
parking
from the
meter.
company.
It is
Right.
the meter.
Okay.
Yeah. So whatever it is. Anyways, yeah, they make a handful of amps, handful of pedals, and they're out of Canada, I think, right? Or
No, I thought it was USA.
okay, I apparently have no idea where this
they're on
company
the
came
border.
from, but
I don't
anyways,
They're out of North America.
yeah, North America.
Somewhere in
There
the
it
north, in the NAFTA area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a compressor, compulator. And it's awesome. It's my favorite compressor ever. I've had this particular one for like 20 years now. Doesn't pump or breathe like a Keeley does or like an MXR. Those are great compressors, but that's more of an effect. Where
Yes.
this is more like a studio compressor. It's very, very, very subtle. Great for bass, great for acoustic, and I use it on electric guitar.
Nice.
So yeah, it's a very, very nice transparent sound too.
Good for live?
Yeah.
That's what you use it for.
And
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah. Me, I still somewhat playing musician. So yeah.
Somewhat you're playing this weekend.
yeah,
so
I
I'd say
play about
you
once
are.
a week. Well, compared to what it used to be of 150 shows a year.
geez.
No, I'm in retirement officially. You know?
Okay.
But that's been on my board for literally almost 20 years, probably, hundreds of shows. So
That's cool.
that's the first one.
All right.
Then into Full Drive 2. Full Tone Full Drive 2, the old blue one. I've tried the orange and the red and the earliest ones, and I settled on the blue with the white knobs. And yeah, it's a great pedal.
Do the colors make a difference?
Well, yes and no. The colors signify changes in the circuit.
Interesting.
And the red ones do sound different than the orange ones, do sound different than the blue ones with the white knobs versus blue ones with the black knobs versus blue ones with black knobs and the toggle switch.
I mean, that's one of the first dual drive pedals.
Yeah, and it's not really dual drive. It's a single drive with a boost added,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
No, yeah, I get it. But I mean, in a single box, being able to up your attack or lower your attack in one box makes sense.
I mean, I'm sure the other people are doing this at the same time, but it is one of the first boutique overdrive TS9, let's take this to the next level kind of thing, And that's where I assume the original ones came from. The red one was made for a year or two, whatever. And then they said, it's too woolly. It's too this, too that. Now we'll put it in orange and,
And you can get those things for a song. I mean, those are sub $100 still.
For the blue ones.
Yeah.
You look at the orange and the red ones, no.
I don't see a whole lot of orange ones, but the red ones,
those guys
the red
hold on
ones
to
are over. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not talking like the new red ones.
No, I'm talking about the old ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, they're still affordable for
Definitely
what they pack in, and they're well made. They'll stand up. I mean, clearly, because they're still out there.
Yeah, and mine's going on 20 years. So
Geez, 20 years. That's awesome.
Yep.
Jeez, it's been 20 years.
If you like it, you like it. That's all there is to it.
There you go.
Next is another full drive or full tone pedal, the Super Trem.
Super Tram.
Yeah.
Love that pedal.
Everybody who owns one loves it.
Love it. It is the best trem pedal I've ever. And again, I've had them all. You name it, I've tried it because I keep looking for the better one.
Here's the thing. Here's my issue with the full trim.
It doesn't
Super
have
Trim.
a
Super
momentary
trim, the super
switch.
trim. Well, no, not that.
What is your issue with that? I mean,
the footprint?
yeah,
It is.
Yeah.
It
See,
is.
like
It
what
is.
what could it possibly be?
But here's the thing, like,
Yeah.
and I know
I mean,
some
you could
guys.
put it at the, if you have a taller board, you could put it at the top.
Yeah. No, and it definitely, I mean, it's awkward because it almost takes up too wide, but it's shallow, all this kind of stuff. And some guys don't use it this way, but I turn the depth and the speed knobs with my feet. I need those big knobs. I
Interesting.
need them to be spread apart. So in a normal, size box, there's no way.
Right.
Man
With
knows
regular
what he
size
wants.
knobs.
Those
yeah.
do have like amazing pots on them too. Tony, let me borrow yours.
Oh, you're welcome
Yeah.
to.
Thank you. I
anytime.
will.
It's awesome.
And I guess they have a new version out too. That
It's the same as the old.
but I thought they added some other features. to
Well,
it.
the original one that I have is just, mono. There's no internal volume control, not external. Then they reissued it and they put like a little trim pot for the volume on the outside. And they might have a stereo one now.
Okay.
Something tells me they have a
really?
stereo one.
Oh,
And I was like, what the? Okay. I mean, if you really want it, but
hey now.
yeah, well, okay.
Jared likes stereo stuff.
Oh
Yeah,
man.
he
See,
does.
now again, me, like going to a gig, there's no way I'm bringing 2 rigs. There's no way
I've done
to
it.
run things
I've
in
brought
stereo.
2 of the same amps
No.
and set them back because I'm the only guitar player in the setup.
I want 2 speakers on either side of the stage.
I actually do that. I put one side wash and one behind me.
Okay.
Nice.
So I still do that, but they're 112s and it's only one head, and I literally only bring one guitar to a gig.
Okay.
And if I break a
you're
string,
super minimal.
that's set break. I told you I'm minimal. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So I do it for audience purpose. That's my thing, because what I've found is
Oh, so you're
when
kind
you're
of
so
like,
if you're at a club,
and if you're on
most of the
stage
PAs
left,
are hanging like you just don't have there's no gap between the stage and where PAs are, right? So that would allow you, like if you're over stage left and I'm on stage right, guess what you're not hearing?
Yep.
So
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
when I played in my band, I was the only guitar player. I had 2 rigs, and they were, left. I had a left and right, and
he had
I
2
walked around.
orange rigs.
Yeah, I walked around because I had a wireless.
No comment.
Well, that would be a good would you rather. Would
Yeah.
you rather have a cable
At
or
Johnny's
a
VFA.
wireless?
Oh, don't get me started.
I
on
love
wireless.
that sound.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
love
whole-
the sound overall that
Okay.
we had
Anyways,
because the stereo's
back to your pedals.
What
Number
we're talking
4.
about. Oh, hold on.
Super Trim.
Yeah, so Super Trim. Last one. Okay, 6 1/2 dozen is this one. Boss DD5 or DD500. It's the same sounding pedal. The DD5 is just the 4-knob digital delay with a tap tempo. Nothing special. The 500 is the new 3-button programmable, so it's got more presets and stuff, but similar sounds. Just either one. I just need a nice digital delay. I like digital.
Why do you like digital?
I don't like the artifacts they're put in with a decent analog recreation. The warble it puts on, the degradation. I actually don't like that. I just want it to be a clean echo, especially in a live situation. For me, the more crap that it puts out, the more noise and the more washiness, it just adds to the noise.
Especially
level
if you're
to
in
me.
a club.
Exactly.
There's so many different
Right.
acoustic things that are happening.
And that's why I don't use reverb live most of the
I
time.
don't either.
Because you put reverb on the guitar and then now it's just like covered up
I
even
got
more.
a little bit of amp reverb, just a touch.
Yeah.
Well, you know how many guitar players are actually out in that bar listening to everything you do.
But here, and there's the thing. And if I played for the people in the bar, well, then I'm bringing my Line 6 pod.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because seriously,
That's right.
if we're going to go down that rabbit hole, it's like, all right, cool. Nobody knows the tone in the room, then screw it. I'm
It's
bringing out
true.
my Squire and my pod and we're done.
That's right.
And a lot of guys do that. But
I got my Jam Master.
yeah. But for me, the half of the reason or more that I'm even playing in the club is, I'm there for me. So if
Right.
it doesn't sound right, if it's not responding like what I want it to, then you know what? I'll just stay home and do it.
I agree with that. You need to take pride in your craft.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So there's the 4.
That's awesome. Good, solid lineup. All right. Hey, dude. Oh, I'm so excited about this. This has been something that we have been talking about for actually quite a long time internally at the Guitar Knobs Headquarters Corporation Incorporated. And it's something that is close to my, I guess, experience / heart, because I just don't know a lot about amps. I wish I did. And
I don't either.
what we hear back from everybody else is they don't either. I get so many people that send emails or send comments of like, well, you guys got to do more amp stuff. And I'm like, I would love to.
Yeah.
So I've literally been chasing you down for a while.
Yeah.
Because
It's been a minute. Sorry about that.
I think you got one of the best one of the best sources out there from just a arm's length on Instagram. If you're looking at that, by the way, what is that for? So people can check that out right now.
Mad Cow Amplification.
Mad Cow Amplification. Check that out on Instagram. You do a great job of explaining the little things that are going on, and it is interesting, and it's from a sort of your point of view, not. Well, I mean, that sounds weird because, of course, it's your point of view.
Well, right. No, it's my point of view as like a repair tech. Like, look at the sometimes idiocy I have to deal with on a daily basis, and look what this is. And
but I say when your point of view, I mean that from a more intimate standpoint, not as a general. Oh, let me teach you all about the stuff. You're just sharing the stuff that you're running into, and by contact, we are learning, and I think that's great.
Thank you.
There are so many instances. If you walk into a guitar shop, you walk into, you're at a guitar show, you're looking on Craigslist, you're looking at Reverb, and there, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's the amps that we have all heard about for so long that we know little about, and they're cool, and we like them because other people talk about them, and especially if we see somebody, on stage that we, look up to, admire, or want to emulate, what are they playing and why? And then we find out, that's the Mojo amp I got to get, right? It's like, well, hey, guess what? That Mojo amp's going to come with a bucket of all kinds of other stuff that you got to deal with. So we are here to figure out what those things are on a couple of different amps. We are going to hit Fender, Marshall, Vox, and sort of grab bag of like the oddballs.
What? No Dumbles?
Ooh, no train wrecks.
Now, just so everybody can have an understanding of this, like right out of the gate, we're going to do the best job we can in the short amount of time to go over some general things. At a later point, if we hear enough fervor from you guys out there, we'll do a follow-up, maybe specifically about one of the brands in particular, probably Fender, because they've got the most, I think
that's
models.
the widest.
That's the widest swath.
Maybe if we see the masses with pitchforks and torches.
Don't come
in
here
front
with
of
pitchforks and torches.
Is this where we insert the address?
No. Anyhow, so onward and upward. Let's do this. All right. Let's.
Well, and actually, the first thing I want to say is that there are three.
Thanks, Jared.
Three do's, I would say, when you're looking at buying used amps. Number one, build a relationship with local retailers. There's nothing better. I know you're talking like buying on the internet, buying a guitar show, buying from someone off Craigslist or, one of the online things, whatever. If you can build a relationship with a local retailer, that way, if you get it and 2 weeks later, some surprise, I didn't know that the filter caps were going to explode on me, whatever. If you have a relationship with someone, they're going to help you out on it. You're not just going to be flapping in the wind.
Right.
It's all on you,
And that probably doesn't mean like some of the bigger box ones that we won't name.
I will challenge that.
Okay.
And again, not to name names, but a lot of times, because they have a guarantee on used products, it's X number of days, 7 days, 10 days on vintage, 30 or 45 on used in general.
Well, you're talking about building a relationship, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I hear you there. Yeah. With the sales. Yeah.
Yeah. There's plenty of shops around. And guess what? Hey, if you don't have a local guitar shop or something like that,
any local retailer,
nice.
I mean, support your local guys. They're going to take care of you if you can build a relationship.
That's more my point.
Yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely. So that's one. Second thing to do is make friends with whoever your competent tech is.
Yep.
Whatever town you're in, talk to your friends, find out who the name that keeps coming up time and time again, and make friends with that guy. So that way, if you're looking at an amp, you're at a guitar show out of town, and if you're actually friends with him, you can send him a text, say, hey, I don't want to bother you, and you could snap him a pic of like the inside of the chassis, and they'll at least be able to tell you, whoa, lots of stuff has been changed. Beware.
What's the best currency to do that? Box of donuts?
Yeah, box of Timbits. Those are the best. Yeah. The best currency to do this is when you're making friends with your tech, then support him. Meaning, if you buy said amp, bring it to him to have him check it out. Because it's going to be a minimum bench fee, $40-$50. He'll be able to tell you if anything's wrong with it. But if they're actually, because I do that with people all the time. Long-time customers will call me and say, hey, I'm looking at this amp. It's like, send me a picture of it because it will be posted online. And I'll email them back, say, nope, you want to stay away from that one for XYZ, you know?
Yeah.
And then the third thing, anytime you're buying anti-vintage amp, just assume you're going to be into it for some money.
Yep.
Just assume you're going to.
Yep.
Okay, now you're going to tell us why. Those are the big
Why?
overarching things
3, yep.
that you did. I'm actually writing some notes down so that I
Wow,
can ask
look
you
at
along
you.
the way.
You
Okay.
are recording this.
Well, yeah.
But he's going to ask questions right now.
Yeah. So anyways,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay. So let's look at Fender first.
Yes.
And
And to be clear, we're talking about used amps and
used vintage.
used vintage
old,
stuff.
not
Older.
current production.
And tube
not
amplification.
in tubes. Yeah. Used
Tube.
vintage amps.
Vintage amps. So what would constitute vintage
25 years.
25 years.
And
or
isn't
older?
this sick? Like I'll be in one of the major box stores and there's something from 1980 something that says vintage. I'm like, what the? Oh God, it is vintage.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. Wow.
You know, I usually consider vintage 60s, 70s, 50s, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what most of us generally call
Yeah.
a vintage amp, you know.
Those are the good old days.
Yeah. So, I
For
mean,
who?
People. For Tony.
I remember when we used
Okay.
to walk uphill both ways.
Yeah.
That's right. Dang it.
All right.
With 2
So-
amps.
so yeah, let's say a Fender. So let's just say blackface in general, you know, everything from Princeton, Vibrolux Deluxe, all, you know, anything blackface.
Right.
And for some listeners who don't know what blackface means, can you explain that?
It has a black face. It's from the era of
The
what,
control
64 to 67?
When you look
68?
at the amp in the front,
Yeah.
it's got a black control plate.
Exactly. Yeah, the face of it is black versus
Yep.
in late 68 they went to a silver.
A silver.
And then
And prior to
Drip
that, it
edge
was brown.
and all that kind of
yeah, brown for a few years and then tweed and
Okay.
Tweed.
so all that. And again, like we just talked about, assume that you're going to have some issues. Maybe some of this has been changed at some point, maybe not. And even if it has been changed, if it's 20 years ago, well, they may need to be done again. And to what degrees, competency, quality parts. A lot of them, filter caps. Just assume you're going to have to do the filter caps. Even
What
if
is a filter cap?
filter cap, it is a capacitor, thus cap, and it filters out the residual AC noise after rectification. So power comes in off the wall, it's AC, alternating current. It has to be switched to DC inside the amp to make everything turn on and light up and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, it's not a perfect flat DC signal. It still has these ripples left. And you'll hear that as noise if your filter caps are bad, because it won't be filtering out all that extra noise.
Aha. Why do filter caps go bad?
Time. They weren't, and especially like when they built all these amps in the 50s, 60s, 70s, none of these companies thought this stuff was going to be used a decade later.
Okay.
You know, I mean, nobody was thinking that far forward. So the average lifespan, especially on the old paper caps, 10 years. And I'll open up one now and it's a 45-year-old amp and they're original. And it's, you know, yeah, it's time. And you know, guy will bring an amp, go, yeah, man, it buzzes, it hums, does all this stuff. Why? I'm like, well, you've got, 50-year-old tires on your car, basically, you know?
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You know, when you open it up and it has bad filter caps, do you see that kind of, is it like
Sometimes-
a tan brown, leaky?
Sometimes they've completely vented. Sometimes they're exploding. Sometimes they're just leaking. Sometimes
Right.
none of that. Sometimes, if I open up a vintage Fender blackface, a 65, whatever, and it's got the original paper caps in it, they're getting replaced.
Right.
Even if they look absolutely fine, even if they measure fine, come on. They're, again, 50-year-old tires on a car. You know?
Right, because they could go at any given time.
Yeah.
And you already have it on the bench, and they
Yes.
paid a bench fee, so you're actually doing them a service.
Yes,
don't
and
wanna-
I do not like to see a repair come back. That is...
Right, you don't want to put something out there you know full well is going to be coming back.
No.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Now, is that considered major surgery?
No.
Filter caps?
and here's the thing, on a vintage piece, to me, maybe not from a reseller, a vintage market, pure vintage market. And I always tell people that somebody will bring me a completely virgin 65, whatever. In fact, I just had a 65, I can't remember if it was Deluxe or Vibrolux. It just came through. That was completely virgin. Nothing had been touched in it. And I had to call the guy and go, okay, you brought it to me because it's humming, it's snap, crackle, pop. It's got all these issues. You need filter caps done, B+ supply rebuilt, all the stuff done. You're going to kill the value of your amp. It's worth more as it sits right now. Once I do this work and you pay me $500 to do all this work, it's going to be worth less.
Mm-hmm.
But, do you want to use it
It'll be usable.
or do you want to just stare at it?
Right.
And that's the difference there.
Sure.
So
that's a tricky place to be.
it is. My job as a repair tech is to make the thing as solid as possible so it can be played to make music.
Right.
That's the way I look at things.
Right.
And I've had some guys, I've brought that up to them and they said, yeah, you know what? Never mind. I'll just sell it as is and let me go get one that's beat or,
Sure.
is a later model. It's not worth as much and we'll put money into that.
Yeah.
So
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's filter caps. That's the first thing. Tubes.
Yeah. I mean, we could do a whole show on tubes.
I
Oh my
mean,
gosh. So
that's 90+% of problems with any tube amp, new or old, but
right.
assume you're going to be into it for tubes, even if it's quote been done before. Who knows how many hours are on it,
Right.
Especially if you're just getting weird random snap, crackle pops, it's most likely a tube, And along with that, a lot of times when output tubes fail on an amp, and I see this in Fender more often than most of the other ones because of the way the circuit's designed and the value resistors they use in the output section, it often takes out what are called screen grid or control grid resistors. And they're basically resistors in line to the pins of the output tube socket that limit the current and actually more so the voltage and by defect.
Okay. So you probably actually made a few people crash their cars right there.
Okay. Let's back up. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, you're fine. That's all. It's all. That's all.
Yeah.
That's fine. So let's backtrack just a little bit. You said with tubes. Can you just give as brief of a layman's understanding of you got power tubes, you got output tubes?
Yes. Yeah. So here you go. Power tubes and output tubes are the same thing. I don't like the term power tube. Because that's more like it can only be used in a power section where this type of tube is usually used in the output section of the amp versus the preamp. So you get the preamp and the output sections.
Okay. So what would the difference be?
The preamp tubes are very low current. And they are used to bump it up from a instrument signal to more of a line level.
So that's the first set of tubes.
Those are the little guys.
So you plug your guitar in, the juice goes forward, it hits those tubes.
Hits those tubes and they bump it up to something that the rest of the amp can work with.
Gotcha.
And the tone circuitry and the gain and your tremolo and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Those are all your little guys.
Right.
And then it goes into the output supply, which are the bigger tubes.
Okay.
And that's what just applies power.
So it collects all the tone. So you plug your guitar in, it gets the gas.
Yes. A little bit of gas.
A little bit of gas, not a ton. And then it travels down and it says, all right, give me some bass, give me some treble, give me some mids, give me some reverb. Then you take that signal. It's almost like a pedal board, really.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end and then it says, all right, this is the make it loud
Now
part.
we make it loud.
All right. And what are those tubes called?
Those, I call them output tubes.
Output tubes.
But even just today, I was buying from a supplier and on their website, and they have their output tubes under power tubes.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, not really, because you also have rectifier tubes that are power. It actually rectifies power, so it's a
Okay. So for our illustration right now,
preamp and output.
you got preamp tubes at the front, and then you have output tubes at the back.
End.
At the
Yes,
end.
sir.
Okay.
There you go.
And then
And we got way off from the thing where we're.
that's okay. That's okay. We're all learning here.
If you want to
We're
come
all
back
learning.
around to that,
Let's go back around.
where it was coming from is that a lot of times in any tube amp, but more so in a Fender tube amp, when an output tube fails because of the way it's designed and the value resistors they use, when output tube fails, often it takes out a resistor that's tied to that output tube.
Okay, and the resistor is essentially helping that signal not go bonkers.
Yeah. It controls, actually sets the bias, the cue, how that tube actually functions.
Okay.
And by default, that if a tube shorts or fails, it'll pull too much current and blow one of those resistors or just damage it.
Right.
So what I see a lot is where a tube will blow and the guy will look in the back and see a tube's not lighting up or it's bright red. So he goes, oh, I got a bad tube. So you replace the output tubes. Then a month later he calls me and goes, yeah, man, it sounded fine for a week and then started sounding funny and then the same tube blew again.
Right.
And I'm like, because when that tube blew the first time,
You lost your resistor.
it damaged one of these.
Right.
So then,
and for people like me who just really need things simplified, the resistor is the idea of like if you have a garden hose
Yep.
that your current is going through, but then all of a sudden that goes into like a straw, like a soda straw.
It's your faucet. It's a faucet right there. It's controlling how much current you want to pass through.
If that is not forcing it into a soda straw, and you have this big giant wave of electricity hitting your tubes, that's where you run into a problem.
Yes and no.
It's called welding.
Most of the time what happens, exactly. Most of the time a resistor won't short.
Okay.
So most of the time they don't short, so it allows all the current through. Most of the time they open or partially open.
I see.
So just the opposite happens. So it allows less current through.
So it starves it.
It starves it. But here's the problem is that depending on which resistor it is and how the whole power amplifier, if you starve one pin, that can actually cause the tube to work harder in other ways. And cause, or what happens even more often is that one side of the power amp will be working less than 100%. So then the opposite side works harder to try to offset
compensate.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's where all the problems come in.
Yeah. Got it. I'm metaphor man. So I'm trying to stop doing that and let you do your thing.
Oh no, that's the garden hose. That's why I started shaking my head. The garden hose is the perfect.
Okay, great
description on that. Yeah.
Let's see. So when you're doing tubes, we're talking about tubes. So one of the common things you hear about tubes, we're doing a lot of front loading on information here.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do that for every single one of the amps we're going to go through, but this is sort of general, like, hey, this is going to help us the rest of the show.
Hopefully.
When we're learning about power tubes, just regular tubes in general, you hear terms like tube rolling, and you hear like matched set tubes and stuff. Touch on that just a bit.
So, and I believe tube matching, with output tubes is important. With preamp tubes, because you can buy a preamp tube, your typical 12AX7 that's in most of the popular, tube amps. It's actually 2 stages in one. So it's like 2 tubes in one little tube. Okay. And you can get those so that the 2 stages are matched with each other. I don't think that's necessarily all that important because other variations in the amp will cause as much problems.
Okay.
But output tube matching, I think is very important because if you have, let's say you're looking at a Fender Twin, Blackface Twin, you have 4 output tubes in it. If 2 are set in the middle, meaning like they pull this much current, then one's really hot, one's really cold.
Right.
Then you see that one that's running really hot. It's going to be hot all the time. It's good.
Right.
Yeah. And then also it could give you an asymmetrical wave and a lot of crossover distortion.
So I would equate this to like if you have if you get a used guitar and someone's put in pickups and you hit the bridge pickup and it just kind of sounds weak, and then all of a sudden you hit the neck and it's off the charts, super crazy loud. You're like, what the crap?
Sort of
They're
like
not
that.
Balanced.
Here's a better one.
Good.
I always go back to cars for some reason.
Sure.
You're setting gaps in spark plugs.
Okay.
And half of them are set correctly. The other half are all over the damn place.
Yeah.
It's not going to run right.
Right.
Some are going to be firing right where they should be. Some are going to be barely firing.
Matching a match set of tubes, essentially someone has tested to see what the output is.
Yeah.
To make sure that they're all pretty much doing the same output.
Yeah. And there's several readings, the transconductance and capacitance and all these kind of stuff. But basically that's the general idea is that they all work very closely to one another. Yeah.
Cool.
How about the flux capacitor?
All right, Jack.
That's very important.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's part 2.
Yeah. Okay. On past tubes, here we go.
Hit your head on the thing.
Yeah. But it's important to spend so much time on tubes because a lot of the,
Right. And that's also where a lot of people say, I don't know what's wrong with my amp. I guess it's tubes, and it may not be. And then it's like then you can also go like, if you start to try to learn about tubes, the more you learn about tubes, the less you know about it. It's crazy.
It's simple, but it's not simple.
And all the different kinds. So spend time, do some learning before you just charge out there, or make a relationship with a trusted tech who's going to eliminate that.
And here's why too. I tell people this all the time: is that you put in your new pair of output tubes. Best case scenario, that's all it was, but you still need your amp bias. You need the bias adjustment done. Most techs will charge a minimum bench fee of whatever, $50, $75.
And just to clarify, a bench fee is
Minimum bench fee. So any tech will say, this is the minimum fee I'll charge you to take a look at your amp. If it needs nothing at all, give it a clean bill of health and give it back to you kind of thing.
okay.
So, if you have an output tube failure, you could go and buy a new set of output tubes for $80 online. They come in, you pop them in, it works for a month, and then you blow a tube, you're out $80. And you still got to take it to a tech. Versus you take it to a competent tech, he'll open it, go, yeah, it's just tubes. I'll sell them to you for the same price that you buy them for online. So you paid me $40 or $50, $70 to make sure you don't go through that. It's biased correctly. And more likely, if there's an underlying issue, they'll catch it.
Okay. What's biasing?
Biasing. Okay. Going back to cars.
All right.
Biasing is like setting the idle on an engine.
Ah.
Yeah. If you can't just buy a new engine and drop it in your car and go, yeah, we're good. You got to set the idle. Otherwise, it could just stall out, or it could be idling at 4,000 RPMs, right?
Right.
Same idea with tubes. You put them in the amp, and most amps need the bias adjust. Some designs don't. And we can talk.
I hear that a lot with Marshalls. I hear biasing in Marshalls is like a real big thing. But we can get to that when we get to the Marshall section.
Yeah, really. Out of the big three, Vox is the only one you don't have to worry about.
Okay.
But yeah, adjusting the bias on tube. Sometimes you can pop in the tubes and it's going to be really close to wherever the bias is set, and you're good.
Okay.
It's negligible difference. Other times it could be way off. I was working on a guy's twin today, and he brought in, he said, yeah, I put in some new tubes. And he's like, it just hasn't sounded right since then. I checked the bias on it. First thing I plugged into it, and I know how loud it should be, what should sound like at a certain volume. It's like, that's really weak.
Right.
Checked the bias on it. It was biased so cold, so low that it was like half the output. The wave looked all distorted. And it was just biased wrong. That was his only problem with it.
I wanted to let you know that it took an immense amount of restraint for all three of us not to say, how low was it? Anyway.
Just throw it in. But so that's the best way to describe bias. It's like setting the idle on an engine when you
Awesome.
And that's basically setting the voltage.
Yeah,
voltage.
Well, yes and no. Most amps, like let's say Fender and Marshall, the way they work is that it has a negative voltage applied to an input grid that actually, it's like a faucet. The more negative voltage, it blocks the current flow through the tube.
Okay.
So when you make a tube hotter, you actually are giving it less negative voltage, which allows the current to flow more freely.
Okay.
And that's
Gotcha.
and what happens is you'll put in a set of tubes that naturally has a higher current rating, so it's a hotter tube, then you're going to want to put more negative bias to restrict that more. So, and that's all you're doing, setting the bias. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
What you got next?
Okay, what do we got? So what we talked about tubes, we talked about filter caps.
We were on Fenders, I think.
And we're on Fenders. Really the only other two things you come across in Fenders a lot are going to be a trim circuit that's out of whack. Meaning that you turn on the trim and the speed, what you would expect 0 to 10, it's like 0. And then at 10, it's only giving you half the speed that you expect. Or the depth. It's like, wow, all the way up, it's barely on. Common problem, that is caps in the trim circuit that have gone out of tolerance. That's very important. A lot of these amps, a cap or resistor will drift in the preamp section. It just gives it a different flavor, different breakup, different tone. But when you do it in the trim circuit, it won't oscillate like it's supposed to, and it will just quit working, or it won't work to the full sweep. So that's a common problem in Fender amps. And then reverb tanks in the Fender amps. I mean, it's a horribly antiquated design. So they break all the time. And that's usually what that is if you have an old blackface and the reverb's dead.
Okay. How do you know if it's dead? I mean, I know that's probably like everybody just went hand to forehead. If you can't
turn
hear
up the reverb,
then it doesn't work.
If it doesn't go reverb,
that's usually what it is.
But aside from that,
Aside
is there other things that it can be like where your reverb can still be working, but it's not really working right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and it could still be the tank because there's
a dummy now.
Well, I will say
that would be you, Todd.
9 times out of 10, if you have a problem with the reverb,
Yeah.
it is either the reverb tank or one of the reverb driver tubes.
Okay.
But most of the time, it's the tank itself.
So the reverb tank needs a tube.
Needs 2.
Needs 2 tubes. So you're
Needs 2
talking
tubes, or 1.5 tubes.
a lot of
to be
tubes in that
exact.
amp.
Yeah, it's actually 1.5 tubes to be exact how it works. One whole tube, the dual twin triode, pushes to the
I was
reverb
gonna
tank.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it has a recovery stage, another tube that after it comes out of the reverb tank to put it back in.
Wow.
So if anywhere along that or a reverb transformer fails, then yeah, your reverb will be dead. But again, 9 times out of 10, it's the tank.
Right. So just based on the very brief description, now everybody should have a very good understanding of why
that
you
line
need somebody
6
to
sounds
tell.
really good right now. That's right.
Yep.
All the trashing on the
I
solid
think the
state,
important
right?
thing that Rob said, no.
And I tried to make that short too. I'm sorry, guys.
No, you did. That was great.
Cut it down in editing.
But it's a great example of why you do need to establish a connection with a local repair person. Because, myself, Rob's done a couple of jobs for me, and, I know enough to get into trouble, but there's no way that I want to go start screwing around with circuitry and different things like that.
It's dangerous.
Yes.
It can be. You can really hurt
There's
yourself.
some serious voltage.
Oh, it
through
hurts.
there.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't done it for a while, so.
Yeah. So quick public service announcement. Seriously, do not attempt to work on your own amp if you do not have guidance or have researched the heck out of what you're doing, because you can end up in the hospital or
you would really have to
you
booger
could
it up to
blow
end
your
up in
arms
hospital.
off.
Let's put it. You're more likely that you would end up with a much bigger bill on your amp.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I do. It's like,
Yes.
oh, so you got inside this? Awesome. Or
Your bench fee just doubled.
yeah, it is. Yeah, exactly. I first have to put it back to like it was before you worked on it. Great. But yeah, more likely rather than you're probably not going to do any serious harm where you're really going to hurt yourself, but you're not going to feel your fingers for, the rest of the night.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
Or you
one
can blow
thing
your arms off.
Well, it's one thing to do tubes, replacing tubes, different things like that. But, someone who doesn't really know what they're doing should never
not pull
a
the chassis. No.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you want to know
Nice
something?
effect there.
I did a long time ago.
Yeah, I figured.
Everybody does. That's how I got started.
And I looked at it and I said, and I looked at it and I said, it was a Marshall combo. It was a 8120, I think. I think it was called an 8120. It was like a Val State amp.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, well, I'm just gonna clean it with some spray dust, because it didn't sound right. Hey, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And I opened it up and I pulled the thing and I was like, oh Lord, what have I done?
Just slide it back in, tighten up the screws.
I gingerly sprayed it and I was like, well, I guess back in the case you go.
Yeah. No.
I sold it immediately after that.
Yeah.
By the way.
Hey, I bought your amp.
Okay. So as far as Fenders go, and seriously, people out there listening, we would really love to hear if this is something you want to hear more of, in particular about, all of the different models of amps that Fender put out. We're most, we're familiar with them. Twins, you got the deluxes, the tweeds, the Princetons, on down the line. So many. So, and I personally think that would be super interesting to just not necessarily learn about how to fix them all, but just kind of learn about what are the differences. Let's move on to Marshall. Most of you have probably heard of Marshalls. Those are typically reserved for heavier use.
Yes and no.
Yes and no.
Okay.
No,
They're
no,
darker.
no.
I mean, they're a lot darker.
There's not a lot of
no,
underpower
darker.
Marshall amps.
Oh, no, you're
darker?
wrong. That's where
No,
you're
not
wrong.
darker.
I
love
always
how we're
thought-
having two conversations
How about-
across each other right now.
How about it? I was yeah.
Well, this ought to be good.
Mute. There you go.
Go ahead.
No, well, okay. So Jared just brought up something that darker. No, just the opposite. Actually, most
Yeah.
Marshalls are bright to the point that the standard mod I do on a 4-input super lead or 50 watt or even an 800 is remove bright caps.
Okay.
They can be very, very, very harsh.
I associate Marshalls with British tone, and I associate British tone being darker.
No,
Warm, yeah.
Warm and bright.
Well, yeah, bright. Here's kind of the how I generally separate the two.
Okay.
Marshall and due in big part to the EL34s and also gain
EL34s being
a type of output tube.
okay.
I would call
I'm
him
sure
a
we're
power
call there,
tube.
Todd.
I'm going to call him a power tube.
Don't do it.
Jeez.
We'll throw something at you here. So an EL34, by how the tube is designed, I guess not really designed, just a byproduct of its design, is it doesn't have the widest frequency response, meaning it doesn't go as low, doesn't go as high.
Right.
So it's going to be more mid-rangey in general. And then high gain stuff in general, it becomes very uncontrollable in the low end as the more gain you put in. So there's caps and stuff put in there where it rolls off the low end. So where I'm going with all this, a lot of Marshalls, because they're a little higher gain and they're using EL34, that's a more broad mid-range. Think vintage AC/DC, where it sounds like a wide mid-range freight train coming at you. It doesn't have the real low lows, doesn't have the real high highs, but it's just this wall of mid-range, you know,
Right.
where a Fender amp, typically like a 6L6 output tube, has a wider frequency response, more lows, more highs. So it sounds bigger on the bottom end, chimier on the high end, and it's not as much gain.
Now you're making sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm going to take that minute just to pause and point out something. If you look up tube rolling or any kind of like tube comparison on YouTube, or you're talking to your friends about it, that's where people are trying different. So some of these tubes are synonymous with these amps. The amp manufacturers decided,
Yes.
like Marshall,
EL34.
we're going to use EL34 on ours. Fender's going to use 6L6 or 6V6.
Different wattages, yes. Yeah.
And those are just literally sort
Synonymous
of
with-
brands.
yeah.
They're not. It doesn't mean much, right? I mean, it's just
you mean the nomenclature for the tubes?
Right.
It's a different tube, and remember this: when Fender started using 6L6s, it wasn't like we want the sound of a 6L6, blah blah blah. No, it was like what tube is inexpensive, sturdy, that will
Right.
fit these requirements.
Give me
of
50 watts.
Right. And then EL34, same thing. Well, EL34, the original Marshalls used KT66s, which
Right.
were the European version of 6L6. They
Right.
were copying Fender and said, well, what do we have over here? It's the closest. So it's from just
Economy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know?
So what ends up happening is, and I've watched several of these videos. Actually, there's one guy, I think he's Swedish, and he does a great series on these where he's got a Marshall, and he rolls through and he's got, okay, here's the 6L6s. He plays the same riff and he says, this is the head with 6L6s, 6V6s, EL34s, and then the KT
88, 65, 50,
the fatter ones,
yeah,
right?
KT88, probably. Maybe.
And it's really cool because you can really hear difference, but you just described the difference that we can hear that they don't go into, which is a wider range of tone. So like you just said, the EL34s have a narrower range of tone, and it's going to sit more in the mids.
Right.
Whereas 6L6 or even a 6V6 potentially, I think was what you're
No,
saying.
6V6, not really.
No, okay,
because
so
it's
I
a
said
lower
that wrong.
wattage tube.
Lower wattage.
And good point that you're talking about is the frequency response is it's not only just simple as wider or narrower, but each one will have more certain resonant areas where 1K would be more resonant in this tube versus this one.
Right.
And then that's where people start comparing 12 different brands of 6L6s
Okay,
and
gotcha.
you can go so far down.
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay. So the point being is that if you have an amp that you really love and you want to see what other tones it can do, that is a way of making that happen. But maybe ask your tech
Yes.
how to do that.
Well, and most definitely, because most amps are set up for one type of output tube, but then within that type, go from this brand to this brand to this brand can be drastically different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And having it biased and yada yada.
Right. And then
yeah.
you also don't have to go through the expenditure of buying all those tubes,
Yeah, absolutely.
which are expensive.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Back to Marshall.
So back to Marshall. So how do we even start on Marshall? So we were talking
About I thought they were dark.
Oh, that's right. So we didn't
British
even get into Marshall. Okay. So one big thing about Marshall. So I guess it is Marshall in general. We've already covered the difference of filter caps and screen girders, all that kind of stuff. In general, Marshall they're not prone to as many issues with filter caps and control grid resistors blowing.
What's a control grid resistor?
Those are those resistors on the output tubes that we talked
gotcha.
about.
Okay.
They're screen and control grid resistors.
Okay.
And the reason they're not as prone to having those blow is that they use a much higher wattage. So even if a tube fails, it's not as likely to damage the resistor versus where in the Fender, they use just enough
Okay.
that, they would cause damage and possibly blow one. And likewise, in the capacitors and most Marshalls are large can caps that have just held up way better over the years.
Okay.
So a lot of times you don't have those problems. But typical problem with more Marshalls, and we're talking like 60s, 70s, even the 80s, 800s, a lot of them, a lot have been modded. So many have been modded. So
Why?
I guess it was probably, most of these mods were probably happening in the 80s when I was about 10 years old. And I'm guessing here.
Why did you do that then, Rob? Why?
Yeah, no, this was before my time, so I'm not responsible. But, because even when I started buying some Marshall, I was like 15, 16, you can get an old 800 head for $400. It was cheap. They were everywhere. And, you want more gain out of it? Well, get in there and swap these 6 resistors and swap it. And now here's the new gain for this. And so-and-so put it in gain stage. And, you want effects loop.
Got it.
So a lot more hacked. And I think it was probably during that 80s time when everybody was trying to get higher gain amps.
Right.
And, and some of these are awesome. The mods have been done great. It sounds fantastic. Other ones are just complete hack jobs. Super glue all over the place, hot glue, guy brings it to me, goes, yeah, it's making a racket. I'm like, well, yeah, there's zip ties holding stuff together. I have literally seen that where like PCBs have been floating around inside an amp, zip tied. And I'm like, well, there's your problem. He's like, well, it was fine for the 2 years I owned it. Or I'm like, it was only a matter of time, But
Yeah.
So those are the hidden dangers with Marshalls is a lot of times they've been modded.
Okay.
So it's a different set of problems versus the Fender stuff. And same thing, you buy an old vintage Marshall, and if you're not buying it from a buddy that's already had it checked out, or you're not buying it from your local shop that's already had it checked out, kind of assume, if there's a hole drilled on the back, somebody's modded it at some point.
Okay.
If somebody says, well, so-and-so put in this special mod, it's got this extra switch. It could be really cool, or you could be buying a train wreck,
Now, if let's put me in a situation where I'm without, now Jared, not one of your situations where I'm walking down the street and a safe falls or something like that.
Right.
But I'm about to pull the trigger on this Marshall that I found on Craigslist. And it says it's had a mod.
Yep.
Are there certain mods that I should be really like, whoa, wait a minute, that's
No.
if it's been modded, it's been modded. And
Well, and that, again, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Anybody that is selling something like that online, a store, anybody, they should be able to give you pics of the chassis, the inside. Okay. And likewise, if you were going to sell an amp, you could take the 4 screws out, take the chassis out, flip it upside down, and take a picture of it. And then, this goes back to the relationship with your local tech. So you, Todd, you're looking at this Marshall amp.
Yep.
You get a picture of it and you text me and go, hey, Rob, can I send you a picture of this? And any competent tech will at least be able to look at it and go, okay, this is what I know has been changed here or here, or no, it looks pretty much all original. You're good to go.
Gotcha.
Give you some insight,
Right.
But that's really it. You have to see the inside. You really have to see the inside.
Okay. Are there any specific, when you're talking about the vintage Marshalls, are there any that you think are probably ones that honestly you're like, this Marshall, for some reason, I feel like some of them are going to be like way more expensive than others. All right.
Plexi front.
Tell us what a plexi front is.
It's not everybody. A lot of people have probably heard the term Marshall Plexi or pulled up on your line 6 amp. It says Plexi tone or whatever.
Synonymous with Jimmy.
Yeah. And this is where you lose me because I'm not the guy that's like,
these guys tell
so
me.
And so use
Plexi.
this amp and
Plexi.
What sounds are synonymous with the plexis, guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's the early stuff. Early Who, Hendrix.
Oh, I've seen where Eric Clapton had a plexi,
Yeah.
I've seen
I got to believe how almost all these guys at some point have plugged.
had a plexi.
It was kind of like, oh yeah, I'll give that a try for a week. Whatever.
So to clarify, a plexi, literally means the front face
is made out of plexi.
Of the amp head is made out of, yes, he's got,
Also,
He's raising it. That's
his
very
hand.
polite,
I
Jared.
know, like, let me talk. Jeez. Well, is it true that Marshall kind of copied the plexi from the Fender bass?
That is false.
Seriously?
They copied the neither. They copied the JTM 45
The Line 6.
from the Basement. So the very first Marshalls were JTM 45s, and it was a Basement. Like,
Wow.
perfectly.
I'm really glad you set that straight.
Yeah. The plexi was when they started to deviate from it.
Okay.
And then pretty much the plexi, and what it is, they use numbers for all their circuits. They didn't have cool names like deluxe and all this.
Right.
The 1959 circuit was the 100-watt plexi. And they had different versions of it, a super lead, a super bass, a Mark II, and all this kind of stuff. And then they came out the 50-watt version, 1987, same damn circuit, just 50-watt.
Right.
And then late 70s, they started switching to the 800s, which was a different schematic quite a bit. It's a different preamp circuit. But yeah, so it went copy of the Bassman, change into the vintage Marshall plexi kind of sound, and then into the 800s.
Very cool.
And the 800s is what we are probably more familiar with, more, I guess you could say, modern, harder rock.
That's the beginning of
Right.
I mean,
That's the heavy metal sound.
Oh, yeah.
yeah, that's the, like, if you listen to, I'm trying to think of an old band.
Scorpions.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, that's, a lot of that was even like the plexi kind of stuff with the dirt pedal thrown in front of
I
it.
mean, Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, sort of, because that's technically, it was a 2555, the Silver Jubilee.
Silver Jubilee.
I'm kind of, well,
I didn't know that.
Hey, everybody
Yeah.
out there, go to the socials and set us straight on this.
yeah, yeah, I'm sure
Do
there's,
not listen to me.
there was
That's why I'm
somebody
doing the show, because I don't
That's
know.
right.
I want to learn.
Set us straight, guys.
well, and I'm sure there's somebody out there right now going, no, so-and-so used an 800 on these
somebody
3
is literally
weeks. And
tearing the vinyl off their steering wheel driving
I
right
know.
now.
But yeah, the 800 was a starting of I guess you call it modern rock, but I mean, this is good. People can get pissed at this, but Jesse's Girl, like that kind of sound.
Yeah.
That's like a stock 800 right there.
Okay.
You know, it's gainy, but it's not heavy, but it's
Yeah.
not as woolly and breaking apart as the 70s stuff was. You know what I mean?
Right. A little tighter.
Yeah, exactly. A little tighter, a little more refined, a little more gain inside the amp itself, but not high gain by any stretch of the imagination. But that's the basis of everything after that. Then.
Gotcha. Sound City, baby.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right.
Okay. Onward and upward.
Onward.
Maybe not upward. Is that where we're going with that?
Sideways.
Oh, well,
We're just going to go onward because there's no up from here.
Before we move on to the next amp here, one quick thing about the Marshall.
Yeah.
2 mods that, and I'm going to catch some real crap for this one. There's 2 mods
Go for
that
it.
if you have a Plexi or a JMP, a 1959 or 1987 model amp, I think everybody should have done is one, telescoping ground leads added to the input jacks. Basically, you change the wires out and it gets rid of 80% of your zzzz.
Okay, hit that.
Yes.
Say exactly what you said one more time because everybody was like, wait, what did he just say?
Yep. If you have a 4-input Marshall, 1959 or 1987 circuit, you want your tech to put telescoping ground leads from your input jacks.
Mm-hmm.
It isolates, it actually has a ground that shields these wires now, so it cuts out 80% of the room noise, background noise.
Aha.
Yeah. And it's very simple. Any tech can do it for you, and it'll really make the amp much more usable.
Do you think the clone kits that you can buy for these plexis, do you think that is a part of
A lot of them are. A lot of it is just, yeah, exactly. That's the way they're made. Yeah,
Right.
they just put it right in. As long as you're putting a wire in, let's just put in this type of wire. Now, back then with the old plexis, they didn't guess the user was going to turn both volume 1 and 2, X them and turn them both up to 10.
Right.
You know, they were like, yeah, this one will be run at 2 for a guitar, and this one, the bass is going to be plugged in over here and be run at 1 or whatever.
Sure.
So, and that's where the noise comes in, where you turn those up and then you put an attenuator on the back end. So you've got all this input noise going on. So that's one quick mod. The other mod that I think, and one of my best friends is going to kick my butt for saying this, post phase inverter master volume.
Yes, that's what That's what I have on. That's what I have on my clone.
Say that.
Were you really,
baby.
Tony? You're just jumping on the bandwagon.
I have a bumper sticker on my car that says I brake for, what did you
Post
say?
phase inverter master
Post
volume.
phase inverter.
That's right.
Say that 3 times quick, Todd.
Yeah.
Okay. In all seriousness,
What is it?
say that one more time.
Slow.
And this is important. This is a big one.
Post phase inverter master volume.
Okay. And what does that do for you?
It adds a master volume to your amp, just like it says, it's a master volume, and it's post phase inverter, which is a section of the amp that goes between the preamp and the output is the phase inverter. It's after that.
Okay.
So the purpose of this is that it allows you to get gain, distortion, clipping through all of the preamp tubes, and then it attenuates the volume right before it goes to the output tubes.
Got it.
In general, it is the least destructive to a cranked Marshall tone.
Got it.
So, and some guys, like one of my buddies that's a real purist, Plexis, cranks them up, puts them in an ISO box. I'm going to hear something from him on this.
Okay.
But, for most usual guys that want to play a Plexi and want to keep their hearing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Solid.
So there you go.
Good
Okay.
advice.
So let's move on to the next amp.
Vox.
Vox. All right. So the most prolific Vox ever, AC30. Mm-hmm. And the AC15 is just a half of an AC30.
30 watt
I mean,
or a 15 watt?
I would go with the 15.
Super loud, less loud.
If you're at home, why do you need a 30?
I don't know. Why are you running down the street with your body language there?
Because that's what fat people got to do.
I'll tell you why you need a 30 rather than a 15, Jared. It sounds drastically different. It's not just half the wattage. It's so if you set them, put a mic in front of them, same dB, same decibel level, the 30 watt has so much more oomph and kick to it. Yeah, it does, because the tubes aren't breaking up at that same volume, and they're not flubby on the low end. Yeah, but here's the thing, it's different. So some guys, they may want that, and they want the amp to break apart earlier, and the 15 is perfect for them. For me, I think the 30 is more versatile, but it's also doubles as a boat anchor.
Right.
That is a heavy
the 2
amp.
handles.
Yeah.
So
60 pounds?
So, how much would you say?
75 pounds?
Those got to be, I mean, they got to be
that's a lot of
70
pounds.
some 80 pounds.
That's why they collect so much dust, because you never move them.
No. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous. But anyways, so talking about like an AC30. Good news is, out of most of the AC30s I see, not a lot of them have been modded. So that's not a general concern you have to be worried about. It just wasn't as prolific. The weakness on an AC30 is the output tubes.
Okay.
We've talked about 6L6 is the type that is typically used in a Fender. EL34 is a stereotypical Marshall. EL84 is what you see in the Vox, the AC30, AC15s.
Okay.
And EL84 versus EL34 for Marshall. One little number, completely different tube.
Right.
EL84, the construction of the tube itself is prone to so many issues. It is this janky little tube, and they're prone to a lot of noise. They're prone to failure. They're very delicate.
Would that include like a dual super lead, the 2000?
No,
Marshall?
no, that's EL34, and that's the difference of those numbers I just said. That one number, 34 versus an 84.
Because I have one of those, and I have a lot of problems with it.
We're on the Vox part now.
I'm just saying.
Well, let's put a pause on this really quick, because I actually have a DSL 100 in the shop right now, and the problem you're experiencing is called bias drift. It's a known issue on the early. Most of the DSLs is actually the way they made the board. One tube will drift higher, red plate, blow, and sound like crap, and then you put in new output tubes. So you need a new output board PCB. It's a common. I actually keep them in stock. I go through them so much.
I'll be calling you up.
Yep. So anyways, so that's that. But back to Vox. So that's the weakness of the Vox is the EL84. It's the actual tube, and they're just pushing the snot out of these little tubes. And is that good?
I found that funny. I don't know.
Captain Humor.
That's awesome.
It's Jared. What are you gonna do?
But yeah, so they just beat the crap out of these tubes, and they're very delicate. So that's most of the issues with Vox is actually just the output tubes. The rest of the amps are pretty well built. And
So if you put different output tubes in, what are you putting in there?
well, here's the thing. And even now, that is my biggest hurdle, along with everybody else that works on tube amps or builds tube amps, current tube production. You can only do so much. We don't make the tubes. So what happens is this factory makes a great tube for however long, and then I don't know, a new warlord comes in, and the country is in chaos, and the factory shuts down, and, and you start the process over again, searching for the greatest EL34 or whatever. So right now, my go-to EL84, you can't change the type of the tube, so you just have to constantly be on the search for what's the most consistently stable and decent sounding tube out there. Right now, as this airs today, I'd say it's Tungsol for an EL84.
Oh yeah.
And that's been my best one. That's been my best one for reliability and noise and all that in the Vox design is Tungsol. Before that, I was having great success with the JJs. And then starting about a year ago, I just started having a lot of noise problems. Just the EL84. I would put them in a Vox and I put it back together and I play test and I hear a little tube rattle. I'm like, what the hell? And open up another box, put them in, and same thing. And so it's literally the EL84 with the Vox amps. It's just the tube itself. It's the original design from 1920 or 30, whatever. And it is what it is, but it's also what gives you that Vox sound.
Right.
A big part of it. So, yeah.
All right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Any other issues with the Vox?
Not really. Like I said,
standard, like good,
Other than
dirty thing.
Well,
you can cook eggs on your AC30.
well, and that goes back to those EL84s that they're beating the snot out of them. That's what gets them. And the way it's designed,
I
where
laughed
the
so
tubes are sideways and they're coming up to the grill, and you know,
I've not heard that saying in so long. That's why I cracked up.
it's a throwback.
Yeah, it is. Beating this, I'm going to beat the snot out of you.
Yep. So, and again, so that goes back to the same weakness of that amp is that too. But as far as build quality components, I mean, it's, you know, and like I said, in my experience, it's not automatically a heavy modded amp. Most guys haven't gotten inside those and tinkered a whole lot. And they hold up really well because, you know, again, they're boat anchors. So,
right.
Yeah.
So that kind of goes over, like we sort of said at the beginning, we're heavily weighting that front part, just learning about all these different things. But now that we've gone through those three, just for time's sake, we're going to forego the grab bag one, which would include
Bargain bin.
or like, you know, Gibson Supros,
yeah, exactly.
all the, the older vintage Supros. We're not talking about the new remake Supros.
No, completely different.
Anyways, all the ones that you walk in, you go, oh, that's a cool old looking amp.
Well, let me say one thing about the grab bag, the bargain bin mixture amps and everything.
Yeah.
Here's the biggest problem with all those amps is that a lot of them use these oddball tubes that weren't oddball at the time, but since Gibson only used this 6K11 in this amp and that amp, nobody's manufacturing them now because they were only used in those amps. So with all those amps now, a lot of times you can't get new production tubes. So you're left with old stock or used. They may be noisy. They may not be available anymore. They might be $80 for a preamp tube, and it is what it is.
And it might just be a really cool looking thing you put in your living room.
And when you turn it on, it's noisy
or you just leave it off and it just looks cool.
Yeah. It is. And that's
I actually kind of think I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
If you got it for a good enough price, and if you like the good enough, then that's fine, I guess.
Yep.
I had a question regarding, with all these things, you hit very specific, like you already knew what or you were sort of addressing a problem, right? If I'm a guy at home playing and I'm like, something's off. What are some of the common things that would make someone call you? And I don't mean like it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't turn on. Like, what should I look out for?
Yeah. And I actually, this phone call happens every day where someone will say, hey, what do you think this is? And he describes the problem. And it's like, man, it literally could be almost anything. If the amp had been running well until then and nothing catastrophic happened, like it didn't fall, you didn't have it hooked up to a generator and this huge voltage spike, 90% of the problems are tube related. So depending on what the noise is, if they say, yeah, the amp is it's weak output, low output, it's distorting really early. That tells me it's in the output section.
Okay.
So weak output, like they have it on 4 and it's like, man, it sounds like it's on 2 and it's distorted and it sounds very thin. That's probably a section or a problem with the output section, the output tubes or something in there. If it's just like a snap, crackle, pop kind of sound, that's just a noisy tube. Could be output, could be preamp. And that's kind of the more common things that people call me about,
Probably a lot of jack input stuff too, I imagine.
Yeah, those are usually the guy can figure that out on his own because hopefully he's wiggled the jack. And if you wiggle the jack and it goes, it's probably the jack or something directly, connected to it. Yeah.
Unplug it, then tighten it up.
Sometimes it's the flux capacitor.
Sometimes, and then you need to take it to a shop.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. We are in a bit of a renaissance with amp building and just actually all building right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot more players. We're getting a lot more exposure to smaller builders and there are more of them. I personally equate a lot of these boutique amp builders, storied amps of the past. Okay. They seem to be the new versions of the old amps that we really love and go for. Right? Now, the question is, are they different? Are they better? Are they one-to-one? And you may not be able to answer that. But
all of the above. All of the above. Because most of the, quote, boutique amps that are coming out right now, I've been inside at least one or more examples of all of them. And it's interesting. Well, here's a quick thing is like 20 years ago, if you bought an amp that said made in USA on it, even if it had PV on the front, it was built like a tank. It was made in USA. In the past decade, that is no longer true. You can get a made in USA amp that I would buy a Chinese or Vietnamese over any day of the week. So that doesn't
pointed
necessarily.
a couple of those out on your.
I have,
and you haven't named names.
I know, but I gotta quit doing it. No, I gotta quit doing it because people can figure it out. And I'm gonna be pissing off some serious.
Hey, here's the deal. There's a difference between saying just coming straight out and naming a name and then saying something isn't good. What
Just
you're
posting the
doing is
pictures
you're saying, hey, this thing that all you guys are paying for, that's expensive, that you think you're getting is good.
It's substandard.
It isn't. And be careful. That's what you're saying.
Well, and here's the thing. This pisses me off from a repair tech and from somebody purchasing gear is that when someone brings a repair tech, their vintage Fender whatever amp or whatever, they're entrusting one of the most prized possessions with that guy.
And a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Most of us aren't dropping $3,000 every day for an amp.
But it might be this Vibrolux they bought in college, and how they did it was, worked a side weekend job, and they had 15 years, and they take it to a tech, and he butchers the hell out of it. And then he charges them for it. Likewise, with some of this boutique gear, somebody will go out and buy X brand amp thinking they're buying a high quality piece, and then 6 months later bring it into me. I'm like, well, I got bad news for you. It's a switch on the back and this and this and this. Like, was it just random failure? And it's like, no, I keep those in stock because it's a piece of crap. Okay. And so you just paid $2,000 for this amp, and I keep this part in stock because it's so crappy.
Wow.
And that pisses me off. It's like, you're taking somebody's money. And so, so the moral of that is that it's all over the place. Some are better, more reliable, building it better, using better quality components.
Learning from the past and making it better.
Yes, exactly. While others, and I assume they don't know, they may not have the background in.
I want to make a soundbite out of that.
Learning from the past and making it better.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, it all goes back to befriending your local amp people.
Yeah.
Your local amp guy.
And again, ask your friends. If you ask, 20 of your friends and the same name keeps coming up over and over and over again, that's a good place to start.
Yeah. Or a place to run from.
Well, there you go.
All right. Well, man, I can't even explain how thrilled I am that we've done this, that we've finally done this episode, and B, that we finally get you to do this episode.
Thank you.
This is I'm going to personally listen to this probably a couple times because I've already learned a lot, and I'm sure I'm going to learn more.
Me too.
So anyways, Jared.
Well, it's time for Would You Rather. Okay, this week's Would You Rather.
He's got a good voice. man.
Okay, see, no matter what I do,
barreled
these guys
right out of
laugh at me.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
I like it. You're at your local guitar show.
Yes.
And you've got a lot of money in your pocket.
Enough money.
Enough.
Yeah, because you got $1,000 in your pocket and you're going to go to the local guitar store. These are the choices you have.
Don't ad lib, big boy. You're going to get way off track. Go for it.
All right, man.
Read the thing.
Thanks, coach. All right.
Read the thing.
I got to read this stuff on the thing here.
He's getting speed wobbles already.
Okay. All right. You're either going to buy a vintage 1968 Silverface Drip Edge Deluxe Reverb. That's a lot to remember. Or you're going to buy a brand new 65 reissue Blackface Deluxe Reverb. So it's basically the same model, but okay, not the same model.
But it is the same.
Sorry,
But it
Jared.
says the same thing on the face of the amp, right?
I get you. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
It's very confusing.
It is.
This is why we saved this Would You Rather for Rob.
Yeah, I guess I could have read that, but
I think we need to do that over.
There's no way. Keep going.
Okay.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay.
We get the point.
So basically,
Tony, what are you doing?
Okay.
I was going to give a little explanation.
Okay.
Can I do that?
little.
In my opinion, there's not much difference between a drip edge and an original Blackface circuit wise.
Okay.
There might be some values that are changed, but those can be changed out. The problem I have with many of the reissues is instead of point-to-point wiring, hand-wired, they're using circuit boards. And it's not the same. I think if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably go with the Silverface and take it to my local amp tech to have him take a look through it and let me know what needs to be replaced.
Nice
i.e.
plug.
Rob.
Mad Cow Amplification.
I would take it over to Mad Cow Amplification for an analysis and tell me
excellent.
what I could do to make it more into the Blackface specs.
Okay. Rob, what are
That's
you
where
doing?
I'm going.
Man, this is a tough one. Even just listening to Tony there, I'm like, good points on both sides. Okay, if I had to decide, gun to my head, I guess I would probably go silver as well. For many of the same reasons. Probably, one of the bigger reasons maybe is that it's probably going to hold resale better.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're, guessing it's the same circuit in general. So yeah, it's probably going to hold resale value a little better. And, it's going to have some mojo to it versus being very clinical. It works and,
Well, that being said, that going into this, you're going to have some money beyond the $1,000 investment.
See, and there goes back to that vintage tube amp thing. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's
plan
worth
for
it, though.
plan for an extra $5.
All right. Jared.
It is really tough because let's say if you want to buy the new amp, you're going to have a warranty on it. You're going to have some security buying the new item versus the old. But me personally, I wanted to bring that last point up though, just to bring it up. But me personally, I'm getting the Silverface, man.
All right.
I'm totally getting the Silverface.
Okay. So on any day of the week, I would probably say the Silverface for two reasons. I like the Silverface look more than the Blackface look. I love the jewel light.
Those are about $2.
Yeah,
I know, but I'm just saying. I like it.
$2
The little
ever.
blue jewel is is awesome.
I'll bring one to you.
I'm just saying. What now? Because I would be using a gigging though, I would just get the Blackface because I know it's probably if it does take a beating, I'm not going to fall to my knees and feel so sad and blown out about it. I know that right out of the box, it's going to work, and I'm not going to have to wonder every single time I plug it in, is this thing going to act funky without spending a bunch of extra money?
You got a warranty.
So for that reason, that's what I would do right now if they were both sitting in front of me. So,
Wow.
Yep, good
I'm
stuff.
surprised you didn't pick the line 6.
okay. Oh man, what a great episode. I'm so glad that we did this. Okay. Hey, guess what, everybody? I'd like to remind you that at reverb.com, you will find a marketplace just for musicians all over the world. You can buy, sell, make offers, and negotiate with complete protection. Whether you're selling from home or if music gear is your day job, there are millions of listings online already, and it's free to list yours too. Join the musicians marketplace at reverb.com. And we'd also like to say thanks to a couple other people. Tony?
Actually, a whole list of people.
Okay.
And the reason that we do this, is they are our executive producers.
That's right.
We would like to thank Tom Barazin, Martin Cliff, David Wolfson, Matt Brammer, Carlos Mancha, Pete Marshall, Derek Fitzer, Robin Smith, John Daly, Oliver Gonzalez, Sean S., Chris Kearney, John Anglin, Robert Marfleet, Alex Leggett, and Darren Gregory. If you'd like to become an executive producer, and Jared, what happens if they're?
Well, if you're an executive producer, you get to have your name read on the thing.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Head over to patreon.com/the Guitar Knobs to find out how.
Yeah, and if you want to do any of the other things over at patreon.com, we would greatly appreciate it. You can sign up for $1, you can sign up for $5 a month, or you can sign up for $10 a month. We appreciate all those things. And if you can't do any of that, you don't want to do that, and you just want to say, man, thanks guys for doing a decent thing out there, then just drop me a line and let me know. Rob, where can we find you?
Mad Cow Amplification.
Okay.
On everything. Instagram,
Got it.
World Wide Web, Facebook. It's just
Awesome Instagram channel. Check it out, everybody.
It's entertaining.
Yeah. Thank you, Jared.
If you need pickups repaired or you want to buy new pickups, Jared, Jared, at BrandonWoundPickups.com. Or my website is BrandonWoundPickups.com. Please give me a shout.
Cool. Tony.
If you'd like to get in touch with me, you can go to pickguardian.com. There's also the various social media that you can go through, including Instagram, Facebook.
Excellent. Subscribe.
Yeah.
Sorry, my eyeballs are floating right now. I apologize. I'm going to hit pause on this. Are you farting on him? What are you doing?
No, I'm done.
It looks like you are.
I'm just fat. It's the way fat people have to sit sometimes. What's so funny?
He's learning.
I'm just picturing the guy hand wiring the amp. It's time for my break. I've been hand wiring these amps.
Like if Jared was actually doing it, like shoves it all in there. Yeah. It
Why
gets,
don't these filter cups fit?
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/The Guitar Knobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.